Hello friends. Today in this video, I am going to be continuing on the How to Get Away with Murder series and telling the story of Season 4. I have uploaded the first 3 if you want to check those videos out first, and the links will be in the description below. But since it is a rather lengthy season, I will get right to it. Episode 1. I'm Going Away. This season kicks off with Laurel talking to her father, and she tells him she's thinking about having an abortion with Wes now being dead. He says he will support whatever decision she makes. Next, Annelise calls the Keating Four in for a fancy dinner. The story then jumps a week earlier where Annelise went back to Tennessee for a little bit to get her mind off of things as she was suspended for slapping one of her clients and she was drunk. She spends time with her mom whose memory is slowly deteriorating. She then receives a call from Bonnie saying Hannah Keating is trying to get the insurance money for the burnt-down house instead of Annelise because it was in Sam's name too. Then jump over to Connor where we learn he still hasn't given Oliver an answer to his marriage proposal yet. Back to Annelise where she gets in a fight with her father because he wants her to stay home and Annelise wants to put her in a retirement home. After arguing, she heads back to Philadelphia and goes to her meeting with the ethics board and they grant her to practice law again, but she has to see a therapist for alcoholism. Then we go back to the dinner party at the beginning of the episode and Annelise gives everyone a recommendation later and says she is letting them free and she doesn't want to ruin their lives any more than she already has. Even Bonnie. Some are happy and some aren't, but she says the decision is final. Before she leaves, Laurel tells everyone she's decided to have the baby in honor of Wes. Everyone leaves. In the following days, Bonnie gets a job with the DA's office and Annelise meets with her therapist, Isaac. Then flash forward 3 months later, and someone has stolen Laurel's baby at the hospital. Episode 2. I'm Not Her. The episode starts out with Annelise talking with Isaac, and Annelise tells him about working with a woman she met in jail, Jasmine, and how she's trying to get her convictions overturned. During the hearing, Annelise is shocked to see Bonnie is now working for the DA. Annelise is able to convince the judge that she was racially profiled when she was arrested for prostitution, and the convictions are sealed, and she is allowed to go free. Isaac applauds her for that, but says they are there to talk about Annelise's sobriety, not her career. We also learn he was an ex-heroin addict himself and has gotten clean. Nate is also shocked to see that Annelise and Bonnie are no longer working together and are working against each other now. Jump over the Keating Four who are doing their best to find internships for law offices, but everyone notices their poor grades and how they haven't been up to industry standard. They don't know everything the Keating Four has been through. Michaela was the only one to land one though, and Laurel decided to put her time and effort into taking down her father because she knows he was the one that called the hit on Wes. Which is true because he ordered Dominic to do it. She's even staying in Wes's apartment now because she misses him so much. Laurel then finds out the firm that Michaela got accepted into was the same one that represents her father, so Laurel wants her to be a mole. Back to Annelise who is with Isaac, and she tells him the last therapist she had became her husband, and he is surprised by this. The ending flash forward 2.5 months later shows Isaac calling Annelise, and he leaves a voicemail asking her where the hell she is and that Laurel is awake. Bonnie then shows up at Annelise's hotel room where there is blood everywhere, and a trail leads to the elevator. Episode 3. It's for the greater good. Michaela is unsure of whether to do what Laurel is asking, but eventually agrees to it. She starts up at Kaplan and Gold, and one of her running mates is of course the douche nozzle Simon. Tegan is the head lady in charge and tells Michaela she believes in her. Only one intern will get the job in the end. Annelise takes on a new case for Ben Carter, who was convicted of killing his fiancée. Annelise discovers the initial public defender that took the case, Virginia Cross, didn't go through all the evidence properly which led to his wrongful conviction. Cross even testifies and says she could have done a better job than she did. Bonnie and Nate work together to try and prove Ben's guilt, but ultimately, Annelise wins and Ben becomes a free man after it's proven his fiancée jumped to her death. Laurel is still on the hunt to find out that her father had Wes killed, and she discovers that her father's plane landed the day Wes was killed and flew out the day after, and she knows Dominic was on it for sure. Michaela then beats out Simon for the intern position and tells Laurel she'll get working on finding out the truth. Meanwhile, Annelise meets with Isaac and she tells him how she wants to start a class action lawsuit against the public defender's office because she believes there are many innocent people, just like Ben, rotting in jail because the public defenders failed to do their jobs. Over to Connor who has dropped out of law school, and his 2 dads show up to talk some sense into him. 2 months later, Michaela showed up at the hospital covered in blood and she asked Isaac, "Is he dead?" Everyone around us dies. Episode 4. Was she ever good at her job? Annelise decides to go ahead and get started with that class action lawsuit. She does realize she is going to need to find some money to fund this because she will be representing lower class inmates who don't really have any money. Annelise tells the university president, Soraya, that she will help her win her custody battle she is having with her husband, and the firm that is representing him is none other than Kaplan and Gold. And Michaela is helping Tegan with the case as well. In the end, it is determined that Soraya's husband was cheating on her long before their divorce and also illegally hiding assets. Soraya is then awarded the custody of their children. Bonnie gives Laurel an intern job at the DA's office, but Denver is not enthused when he learns of this because he thinks she is just an Annelise undercover agent. Bonnie assures him that's not the case. One night after a party everyone attended, Laurel and Frank hooked up again, which she almost immediately regrets the next day. Laurel and Michaela continue to try and figure out a way to get into Tegan's files to see the notes about Laurel's father, but it's not as easy as they thought. They go to Oliver in hopes of him being able to hack the files. Jump over to Bonnie, who goes undercover as a woman named Julie and starts have therapy sessions with Isaac, but she just wants to get more information on what Annelise is up to. Isaac has no idea that this Julie is actually the Bonnie Annelise talks about. The ending flash forward shows Isaac at the hospital with Michaela, crying while he ignores Julia's phone call. Bonnie then arrived at Kaplan and Gold, where there is blood everywhere. Oliver seems to have seen what took place. Episode 5. I Love Her. The episode opens with Bonnie heading to Isaac's office for a therapy session, and she is still going by Julia, and she uses May as a name in place of Annelise's name to vent. She tells him she wants to hate May so bad, but she just can't, and she's like the mother figure she's never had. A flashback is then shown when Annelise was a young lawyer, and she was on a defense team that was defending a councilman that had assaulted Bonnie as a child. She depicts Bonnie as a liar on the stand, and doing what any lawyer would do in that situation for their client. Annelise wins the case, but she knows deep down Bonnie was telling the truth, and she quits the firm she was working for and asks a young Bonnie if she wants to become a lawyer. She takes Bonnie in and introduces her to Sam. Back to the present, and Annelise is approaching potential class action clients, and when Bonnie finds out what she is doing, she goes to the clients herself and tempts them with better deals than Annelise is offering. Annelise and Bonnie are really bumping heads recently because Bonnie is but hurt Annelise let her go after everything they've been through. Oliver just started up his own IT company, and he is actually hired by Kaplan and Gold, but he only signed up with them to help Laurel and Michaela with their mission. After the workday is over one day, Michaela and Connor break into the Antares files in Tegan's computer. They find a cease and desist letter for another murder, but they tell Laurel they don't want to spy anymore because they like their new jobs at this firm. Bonnie meets with Isaac, and Isaac puts the pieces together and realizes that her name isn't Julia, it's Bonnie, and she's the one Annelise fired. The flash forward is 2 weeks later, and Asher is being held in jail as a suspect. Episode 6. Stay strong, Mama. Isaac is struggling with what to do because for some reason, Annelise is a trigger for him, and he tells this to his own therapist. Annelise's class action lawsuit is heating up, and the whole DA's office is working to try and make sure she doesn't win any cases. Connor is now helping her out as well. At Kaplan and Gold, Jorge Castillo shows up at the office, and Michaela calls Laurel to tell her. She then gets another call from Jorge, and he asks her to dinner. Asher then arrives at the office because he's dating Michaela, and Tegan takes a liking to him right away for some reason. At the DA's office, Annelise yells at everyone there for being terrible people and keeping innocent parents away from their children to prove a point. At Kaplan and Gold, Oliver is freaking out because he thinks Jorge is there after finding out a breach in the system, but turns out Jorge is there because he is announcing that he is taking his company public and wanted to tell his firm. At dinner, he explains this to Laurel, and she believes that is the reason he had Wes killed. So no bad news could be released before the company went public. They knew Wes was trying to take them down. Later that night, she explains this to the others. She convinces Oliver that they need to leak all his files before the company officially goes public. Annelise continues to battle with the DA and the class action and does anything she can to expose them, including holding press conferences from suffering children. Oliver explains to Laurel and Michaela that Kaplan and Gold's data system is unhackable, and the only way they can get the files is with Tegan's approval. Michaela says she's not doing and ruining her future. Isaac's ex-wife and his therapist, Jacqueline, stops Annelise at her apartment door to talk. The flash forward is a week later, and Annelise is in the shower covered in blood. Episode 7. Nobody roots for Goliath. Jacqueline tells Annelise how her and Isaac lost their daughter a few years ago, and it caused them to grow apart, and that is when he picked up heroin. Annelise then tells Isaac they can't do sessions together anymore because they're getting too close. The class action lawsuit starts, and the DA tries painting Annelise as a drunk. Annelise tells Connor they're going to be in for a long trial. Laurel and Michaela decide to update Frank and Asher about what they're doing and trying to prove Laurel's father had Wes killed. Laurel begs Frank not to tell Bonnie or Connor about what they're doing because then the whole thing could blow up in their faces. Michaela tells the group that Antares is going public Friday, so if they want to expose Jorge before that, they need to do it right away. Michaela also tells them Tegan is throwing a party at the office in celebration of the company going public, and they could use the party as a way to get the documents they need to leak. In court the next day, the DA calls Isaac to the stand to testify whether or not he thinks Annelise is fit to run a class action lawsuit. He defends Annelise and tells the court she has been nothing short of a perfect patient, even though they've actually had their differences quite often. The judge then rules in Annelise's favor and the class action will proceed. Later that night, Oliver slips up and tells Connor about the others trying to take down Laurel's father for killing Wes. The ending flash forward is 48 hours later, and someone is flatlining in the hospital. Episode 8. Live. 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 The episode begins with Oliver arriving at the office that night, and he sees Michaela, Asher, and Laurel huddled up. He walks up to them and sees someone dead and screams. But then the story jumps 24 hours earlier. Connor had just learned from Oliver about what they're doing, so he storms over to Laurel's to confront them all. Annelise arrives to her apartment one night to Bonnie there telling her that she loves her. Annelise tells her to leave. At Laurel's, Connor tells them they can go through with their little plan, but the second something feels off, he's stopping it and getting Annelise involved. At the party, Simon goes up to Oliver and says he likes him. Oliver tells him he's with Connor. A little later, Connor calls Annelise and tells her everything and how they want to bankrupt Jorge Castillo to avenge Wes. Back to the party where Michaela and the others start their plan to get the documents by using Tegan's keycard that Michaela got a hold of. While she is giving a speech, Oliver goes down to the server room. They make a copy of the hard drive and are going to frame Simon as the one that hacked the network, and it's Oliver's job to plant it on him. He's upstairs and a floor below. Simon walks in on the others and knows they're up to something. Simon grabs Laurel's gun out of her purse and accidentally shoots himself. That is when the beginning of the episode happened and Oliver walked in on them. Simon is unresponsive. They panic and try reviving him, but no luck. Michaela tries framing it like he did it to himself, and she witnessed it. Laurel leaves, and then Annelise calls her to come over. She starts bleeding on the elevator at the hotel, and she faints. At the office, Asher is arrested in suspicion of killing Simon. Annelise does everything she can to save Laurel's baby. Episode 9. He's dead. Laurel is at the hospital getting treatment and Annelise tries seeing her, but is not allowed. Jorge then shows up with a court order and takes his grandson who survived the encounter. He claimed that Laurel was on drugs and bipolar, so child services arrives at the hospital as well. He was then given custody. Annelise knows he is lying about the drugs. Laurel is then entered into the psych ward. Annelise begs Isaac to help her out and get Laurel free. Meanwhile, Dominic found out about all of this and he wants to exact revenge on Oliver. Bonnie returned Laurel's bag to her that was in evidence, but the hard drive with all of the proof is gone. Asher is then released from jail after Bonnie talks with some of the detectives. Asher then goes to the hospital and he tells the others Simon is still alive, but is on life support. Oliver ordered the others to stay away from Simon because they've already ruined his life enough, and he doesn't care if Simon tells the truth anymore. Frank found Dominic outside the law office and beat his ass down wanting the hard drive back. Frank then kills him when he won't give it up, and Laurel is not happy when she learns of this. Annelise meets with the others and tells them they will never learn their lessons. Frank stole Dominic's phone and shows Annelise a voicemail from Wes to Dominic before he died that said, "It's Christoph. I'm in trouble. We all could be. Call me as soon as you get this." Episode 10. Everything we did was for nothing. Laurel is still in the hospital, and Annelise tells Michaela Laurel may have done this to herself. All she saw was a bloody Laurel on her elevator, and she doesn't know how that happened. Laurel later tells Michaela that Frank accidentally hurt her a little earlier, and that probably caused the internal bleeding. She tells this to Annelise, who goes back to Isaac hoping he can help get her out of there. The police are still under the impression that Asher had something to do with the shooting, and they're just looking for conclusive evidence. Asher admits to Nate that he did have a confrontation with Simon earlier, but he definitely didn't shoot him. Annelise, looking for the hard drive, goes to Bonnie and apologizes for everything, hoping she can get the hard drive that is in the evidence room as she works with the DA. They make amends. Laurel apologizes to everyone for getting them in this mess, all for Wes, who they can't bring back anyway, and now Simon is suffering for her foolishness. Annelise convinces Isaac to give Laurel a psych evaluation in hopes of getting her free from the psych ward. Tegan sticks to the story about Simon doing it to himself, but she knows there's more to the story and she's covering for Michaela. Laurel is granted release from the hospital and returns to her apartment where Frank says he will protect her. Frank then shows Laurel the voicemail Wes left Dominic, and then the phone actually rings, and it is Laurel's mother's number. Episode 11. He's a bad father. Laurel is on the phone with her mom, and her mother says she will help Laurel take down her father, and she will even testify against him. At court, Jorge tells Laurel she will give her son back to her if she hands over the hard drive. Laurel takes the stand and they try painting her as a drug addict, but she denies ever doing drugs, and she just wants her son back. The other lawyer tells the courtroom Laurel tried to get an abortion, but ultimately backed out. After court, Connor tells Annelise about a potential client that they should make the face of their class action, and it's Nate Lahey's father. He was accused of murder and has been in jail for a long time, but also had a shady public defender represent him back in the day. At first, he declines, but Nate convinces him how good of a lawyer Annelise is. The second day of the hearing, Laurel's mother takes the stand and tells the court how great of a mother Laurel will be. She isn't cross-examined for some reason. Isaac then takes the stand and says Laurel was fit for her baby and never displayed any signs of drug use. When Isaac is cross-examined, the lawyer brings up his drug history and he accuses Isaac of killing his daughter and then making it look like she did it to herself. The DA is also going to reopen his case. Annelise is furious when she hears this, and she knows Denver was behind this. Bonnie does tell Annelise that the evidence looks legit. Isaac's testimony is also excluded because of this investigation, so Jorge gets to keep custody of the baby. Laurel is heartbroken and even starts to wonder herself if her dad really did have Wes killed. Nate convinced his dad to sign the case form, and he takes Annelise to dinner. After dinner, she goes to Isaac's to talk to him, but he won't answer the door because he relapsed. The episode closes with Bonnie showing Frank a surveillance photo of Wes meeting Laurel's mom before he died. Episode 12. Ask him about Stella. This one starts off with Isaac right after court the following day, and he was in major depression and stopped on his way home to get some pills to get high. Annelise showed up, and he didn't answer the door. Bonnie and Frank meet up, and he gives her some equipment and tells her not to tell Annelise what they're doing. Back to Isaac that heads out the following day, and when he gets home, Annelise is there, and he confesses to taking drugs the night prior. Annelise tells him she's going to help clear his name because she knows he didn't kill his daughter. Bonnie is at work later that day and talks with Ronald, who is the prosecutor that is doing Isaac's case. Bonnie tells him she will help him out. Annelise meets with Nate's father, Nate Sr., and discusses how they're going to approach the case. He admits to killing an inmate in prison, but says he didn't kill the person he was charged for. Annelise is shocked to learn the class action has been upgraded to the Supreme Court. Laurel tells the others she finally gets to meet her baby. Frank wants to join her. Bonnie meets with Annelise and tells her the details about Isaac's case. She had oxycodone in her system, which is the same drug he would take back in the day. Annelise goes to his house and asks for an explanation. He says Stella took those drugs from his stash, and he didn't want Jacqueline to find out he was using, so after Stella overdosed, he made it look like she did it on purpose. He sent Jacqueline a goodbye text from Stella's phone saying she couldn't take it anymore. Laurel meets her son and names him Christopher. Bonnie is able to get Isaac's case dropped when she blackmails Denver. Annelise goes to tell him this, but he is high. She is disappointed and leaves. The episode closes with Frank approaching Laurel's mom and asking how she knew Christoph. Episode 13. Lahey versus Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Annelise prepares for court in the Supreme Court, and she gets help from Olivia Pope. Nate tells his father how the case is going to a national sector, and he is the face of the class action lawsuit. Nate assures his father Annelise will do everything she can to free him. Annelise heads to the Supreme Court and is awed that she will be working in there. She tells Olivia losing is not an option, and it is her lifelong dream to win a case in the Supreme Court. Back in Philly, Frank tells Bonnie that Laurel's mom tried paying Wes off to stay away from Laurel. The Keating four pack up to head to D.C. as well as Annelise's mother. Michaela will be second chair for the hearing. She's patiently waiting for Asher to arrive in town. Well, Marcus, Olivia's right-hand man, starts flirting hard with Michaela, and it ends with them hooking up. She cheated on Asher. The Keating four arrive the following day, and Laurel and Connor can just tell Michaela hooked up with Marcus, but Asher is oblivious. To stress out Annelise even more, she gets a call from Jacqueline saying Isaac overdosed 3 days ago, and he's not in good shape and his kidneys are failing. She blames Annelise, and this causes her to spiral. Olivia has to pick her up and tell her she can do this. The case starts and Annelise knows this won't be easy because the judge is hard on her and her client. She gives an impassioned speech about the promise of civil rights remaining unfulfilled by the American justice system. She gives a press conference afterwards. Frank goes searching for the $100K Laurel's mom paid Wes, and he finds a recording while snooping around. The recording is pretty much Laurel's mom telling Wes to take the money and stay out of Laurel's life. Back in DC, Annelise gets a call from Bonnie who tells her Simon is awake. Episode 14. The day before he died. 8 months ago, Wes meets with Laurel's mom at a coffee shop. This is when she offers to pay him the money to stay out of Laurel's life. He secretly recorded the whole conversation and took the money. In present day, Annelise tells the others that Simon is awake, and he could expose all of them now that he knows the truth. Oliver then receives a call from Simon to see him. After the meeting, Oliver tells the others that Simon doesn't remember everything that happened, but he's slowly piecing it all together. Laurel's mother then shows up. Laurel then confronts her about the recording and her mom just says she was trying to protect her. She meant no ill will. At the hotel, Connor tells Michaela she needs to be honest with Asher, and if she doesn't like him anymore, she needs to tell him and stop leading him on. She is then called in for questioning in relation to Simon, and she sticks to the story. Michaela tells Oliver he needs to control Simon, and that's their way to not get exposed. They try getting Annelise to be his lawyer, but Simon already hired someone else, Tegan. Annelise goes to visit with Isaac after his incident, and he tells her how proud of her he is in regards to the Supreme Court case. He also tells her not to blame herself, and none of this is her fault like Jacqueline suggests. She then leaves crying. Asher and Michaela get into a fight when he finds out that she cheated on him with Marcus. Annelise shows up and tells them they have bigger issues, and that is Simon remembering what happened. She gets Oliver to go back in and talk with him, and Oliver promises him a green card to keep quiet, and he doesn't want to go up against Annelise because he'll lose. He doesn't know what to do. In the meantime, Laurel goes to Denver and she believes Denver knows who killed Wes and is hiding it for her father who donated to his campaign. Bonnie calls Annelise while she is driving and tells her that Denver has the hard drive and is playing both sides. Annelise then receives another call from Nate, and there has been a car accident. Episode 15. Nobody else is dying. Season finale. The body in the car accident turns out to be Denver, and Bonnie thinks it was Antares that had him killed when they found out he was working both sides and had the hard drive. The person now in charge of the DA's office is Ronald. Annelise meets with the Keating Five and says they are all sticking together and no one else is dying. Jorge calls Laurel and asks where her mother is, and Laurel says she doesn't know, and if Laurel wants Christopher back, she better find out. She sends Frank on a mission to find her, and then she is interviewed by the FBI because she was the last person to see Denver alive. At the hospital, Simon demands to see Annelise to talk over their green card agreement. After Laurel's interview, she tells the others she told the FBI that her father should be the primary suspect. Nate got a hold of the hard drive as well and has Oliver sift through it. Oliver doesn't find the illegal files, and Annelise tells Tegan to give them up or she could go down with Jorge too. Tegan removes her from the building. Annelise meets with Jorge and says she will give over the hard drive if she gives Laurel custody of Christopher back. He eventually agrees as he doesn't want to go to prison. Laurel gets her son back, but still claims she has no idea where her mother is. We then find out Tegan agreed with Annelise earlier to turn on Jorge, and he is arrested by the FBI. Tegan handed over the files needed to arrest him, and she was granted full immunity. Michaela went full evil mode and called ice on Simon, and he was deported, so he couldn't say anything to the authorities. Annelise is upset with her for doing this, but then she gets a call from Nate, and she won the Supreme Court case. Connor decides to apply back to law school after the good news, and he feels he can still be a good lawyer. Nate is going through some secret files that Denver had on all of them, and on Bonnie's file, it says, "Child alive." A new student then shows up to the college, and his name is Gabriel Maddox. Laurel takes a shower and has scratches all over her, so maybe she did kill her mom after all. The season closes with Frank making a call to someone saying good times didn't last too long. Her kid here, talking about Gabriel. And that is season 4 of How to Get Away with Murder. We'll do seasons 5 and 6 next. Thanks for watching.